My name is Jessica Mitchell, 27 years old, working as a receptionist at Wilson and Brooks Marketing. That Wednesday started like any other day until a well-dressed visitor walked into our lobby. I noticed his hearing aids and instinctively greeted him using the sign language I learned from my deaf cousin Emma. That simple gesture, signing hello, welcome to Wilson and Brooks, completely changed my career trajectory. I had no idea our CEO was watching through the security cameras. Before I tell you how this moment transformed my life, drop a comment about where you're watching from, and hit subscribe if you want more stories about workplace moments that changed everything. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, in a bustling household where communication took many forms. My cousin Emma moved in with us when I was 8, and she was 10 after my aunt passed away. Emma was born deaf, and her arrival changed our family dynamic in beautiful ways. Instead of expecting her to adapt completely to our hearing world, we all began learning American Sign Language. I took to it quickly, fascinated by this expressive, visual language. Emma and I shared a bedroom through our teenage years, staying up late, signing about boys, school drama, and our dreams while our parents thought we were sleeping. Those silent conversations in the dark created a bond between us that shaped who I am today. Emma taught me that communication is about connection, not just words, and that listening happens with more than just ears. After college, I landed a job as a receptionist at Wilson and Brooks Marketing, one of the top marketing firms in Seattle. It wasn't my dream position. I'd studied communications and hoped to eventually work in the creative department, but it was a foot in the door. 3 years later, I was still answering phones and greeting visitors, watching others climb the corporate ladder while I remained on the ground floor. Wilson and Brooks had a reputation for being cutthroat and competitive. The office occupied 15 floors of a downtown high-rise, with the executive suites perched at the very top. Most employees in supporting roles like mine rarely ventured above the 5th floor. The company culture rewarded visibility and vocal self-promotion, neither of which came naturally to me. My immediate supervisor, Mark Thompson, managed the administrative staff with minimal interest. A 50-something man counting down to retirement, he viewed receptionists as interchangeable and had cycled through 3 before me. I'd lasted longer only because I handled difficult clients well and solved problems before they reached his desk. "Just keep the trains running, Jessica," was his favorite phrase, followed closely by, "That's why we have receptionists," whenever something went wrong that needed fixing. I'd made several attempts to move beyond the front desk. I'd volunteered for company events, submitted ideas through the suggestion program, and even applied for 2 internal positions in the marketing department. Each effort ended with polite rejection or, worse, being completely ignored. The creative directors barely made eye contact when passing the reception desk. The morning of that fateful Wednesday began like any other. I arrived at 7:30 to prepare the lobby before the 8 o'clock rush. I stocked the coffee station, updated the digital welcome board, and reviewed the day's visitor list. 3 client meetings, 1 vendor presentation, and a job applicant for the graphic design team. By 9, I'd already dealt with a coffee spill in the waiting area, redirected a lost delivery person, and calmed an angry client who arrived for a meeting that had been rescheduled without his knowledge. Through each minor crisis, I maintained the pleasant, unflappable demeanor expected of front desk staff. "I don't know how you stay so positive," said Amber Chen, an account coordinator who had started at the company around the same time as me. Unlike me, she'd already been promoted twice. Amber stopped by the reception desk most mornings, one of the few people who treated me like a colleague rather than office furniture. "Just doing my job," I replied, printing a new meeting schedule for the confused client. "You should be doing more than this," Amber said, leaning against the high counter of the reception desk. "You've got better people skills than half the account managers upstairs." I shrugged. "Maybe someday they'll notice." "You need to make them notice," she insisted. "No one's going to pluck you from obscurity if you just keep quietly doing your job well." "That's literally what they tell us to do in the employee handbook," I pointed out. Amber rolled her eyes. The handbook was written by people who already have the jobs everyone wants. She checked her watch. "Gotta run. Cooper Technologies team is coming in today. Huge potential client. Everyone's freaking out upstairs. Cooper Technologies? They're not on my visitor list. Last minute meeting. Richard set it up personally. Richard Wilson was our CEO, a near mythical figure to those of us on the lower floors. Just send them straight up to the executive conference room if they show up. With that, Amber hurried toward the elevators, leaving me to update my visitor log. I added Cooper Technologies' executive conference room to my list, not knowing how significant that entry would soon become. The morning progressed with its usual rhythm of phone calls, deliveries, and visitors. I maintained the calm, professional atmosphere of the lobby, the company's first impression for everyone who walked through our doors. It was a role I performed well, even as I dreamed of doing more. At lunch, I ate a salad at my desk, scrolling through internal job postings on my phone. Nothing I qualified for, at least according to the listed requirements. 3 years as a receptionist didn't translate to the marketing experience they wanted, despite all I'd learned from observing client interactions and overhearing campaign discussions. The afternoon brought a new set of challenges. A conference call that dropped 3 times, a printer jam in the lobby business center, and an executive's coffee order I had to run out and replace after our in-house barista got it wrong. Through it all, I maintained my professional composure, the pleasant face of Wilson and Brooks Marketing. Little did I know that in just a few hours, everything would change because of a simple greeting and the language my cousin had taught me years ago. By 2 o'clock that Wednesday afternoon, the lobby had fallen into its typical mid-afternoon lull. Most meetings took place in the morning, with the occasional client lunch extending into the early afternoon. I was updating the visitor log when the glass doors swished open, letting in a blast of Seattle's chilly spring air and a man who would unknowingly change the course of my career. He was tall, maybe in his early 40s, dressed in a tailored navy suit that immediately signaled important client. His salt and pepper hair was neatly trimmed, and he carried a sleek leather portfolio under one arm. But what caught my attention were the discreet hearing aids visible when he turned his head, and the slight movements of his hands as he finished what appeared to be a video call on his phone. I recognized those movements immediately American Sign Language, though I could only see part of the conversation from my angle. He slipped his phone into his pocket and approached the reception desk, his expression conveying the slight apprehension I often noticed in visitors trying to navigate a new environment. In that split second, I made a decision that felt completely natural, but would prove to be pivotal. Instead of my usual verbal greeting, my hands moved automatically, forming the signs I'd used thousands of times with Emma. "Hello, welcome to Wilson and Brooks," I signed, adding a friendly smile. The transformation in his expression was immediate. Surprise gave way to delight, his professional facade softening into genuine warmth. His hands moved quickly in response. "Thank you. I wasn't expecting to be greeted in ASL here," he signed back. "I learned from my cousin," I explained with my hands. "Are you here for a meeting?" "Yes, with Richard Wilson," he signed. "I'm James Cooper from Cooper Technologies." My eyes widened slightly. This wasn't just any visitor. This was the CEO of the potential client Amber had mentioned, the one important enough for our own CEO to arrange the meeting personally. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. Cooper," I signed. "Let me check you in and show you to the executive conference room." As I entered his information into our system, I noticed other employees walking through the lobby, staring at our silent exchange with curiosity or confusion. Our receptionist manager, Mark, passed by, giving me a quizzical look that I pretended not to notice. "Would you prefer an interpreter for your meeting?" I asked with my hands, realizing suddenly that the company might not have arranged proper accommodations. Mr. Cooper smiled. "I can manage with libretting for short meetings, but I appreciate you asking. Most people don't think of it." I finished the check-in process and came around the desk. "I'll walk you to the executive floor," I signed, then added aloud for the benefit of security, "I'm escorting Mr. Cooper to the executive conference room." As we walked to the elevator, I gave him a brief overview of our company, using both sign and speech since we were walking side by side. "How long have you been signing?" he asked as we waited for the elevator. "Since I was 8, I replied. "My cousin Emma is deaf. We grew up together." Your signing is very natural, he commented. Most hearing people who learn later have a distinct accent, for lack of a better term. Emma would say I still sign with a hearing accent, I laughed. But she was a patient teacher. The elevator arrived, and as we rode to the top floor, I gave him a quick overview of our company's history and some of our notable campaigns. I wasn't supposed to do this, receptionists weren't part of the sales process, but it felt right to make him comfortable before his meeting. Wilson and Brooks has been around for 20 years, I explained. They specialize in integrated marketing campaigns for technology companies. I think you'll find they understand the tech sector well. Mr. Cooper nodded appreciatively. That's exactly what we're looking for. We're launching a new line of assistive technology products, and we need a marketing team that gets both the tech and the human elements. The elevator doors opened onto the executive floor, a space I rarely visited. The receptionist there, an older woman named Patricia who guarded the executive suite like a sentinel, looked surprised to see me stepping out with a visitor. James Cooper for Richard Wilson, I explained aloud, then turned to Mr. Cooper. Patricia will take care of you from here. It was wonderful to meet you. Thank you for making me feel welcome, he signed, then added aloud for Patricia's benefit. Your receptionist has been extremely helpful. Patricia nodded stiffly and gestured toward the waiting area. Mr. Wilson will be with you shortly. Before returning to the lobby, I signed quickly to Mr. Cooper. Good luck with your meeting. He smiled and signed back. I have a feeling we'll be working together more in the future. I had no idea how prophetic those words would prove to be. Back at my desk, I returned to my regular duties, the encounter with James Cooper becoming just another pleasant interaction in my day. I didn't mention it to anyone, not even when Amber stopped by later to ask if the Cooper people had arrived. Just Mr. Cooper himself, I told her. He went up around 2. Just him? No team? She looked surprised. Not that I saw. Interesting. She chewed her lip thoughtfully. The meeting's still going on. Everyone's wondering what's happening. I shrugged. I'm sure you'll hear about it soon enough. Little did I know that I would be hearing about it much sooner, and in a way, I never could have anticipated. The rest of the afternoon passed in its usual rhythm. I processed mail, directed calls, and greeted the occasional visitor. Around 4 o'clock, I noticed increased activity from the executive elevator senior staff members hurrying in and out, their expressions a mixture of excitement and tension. Something was happening, but as usual, those of us in support roles were the last to know. At 4:30, my desk phone rang with an unfamiliar extension. Reception desk. This is Jessica speaking. Jessica, this is Diane from the executive floor. Her tone was brisk and formal. Mr. Wilson would like to see you in his office. Immediately, my stomach dropped. In 3 years, I had never been summoned to the CEO's office. In fact, I had never even spoken directly to Richard Wilson, beyond a passing good morning, when he occasionally came through the lobby. Did he say what this is regarding? I asked, my mind racing through possible scenarios, none of them good. Had I made some terrible mistake? Was there a complaint? Was I being let go? No, he did not. Please come up right away. Diane hung up without further explanation. I quickly checked my appearance in the small mirror I kept in my desk drawer, straightened my blazer, and asked the security guard to watch the front desk. The journey to the executive floor felt surreal, like walking through a dream where the familiar suddenly becomes strange. Patricia looked up as the elevator doors opened, her expression unreadable. Go straight in, she said, gesturing toward the imposing double doors at the end of the hallway. They're expecting you. They? My anxiety doubled. I walked down the carpeted hallway, passing glass-walled offices where executives pretended not to watch my progress. At the end, I hesitated before the doors marked Richard Wilson, Chief Executive Officer, then knocked softly. Come in, called a deep voice. I entered a spacious corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of Seattle's skyline and Elliott Bay beyond. Richard Wilson sat behind a massive desk of polished mahogany, his silver hair and tailored suit projecting the authority of someone accustomed to power. But what truly shocked me was the person sitting across from him, James Cooper. Jessica, Thank you for joining us, Richard said, rising from his chair. Please, have a seat. I moved woodenly to the empty chair beside Mr. Cooper, who smiled warmly and nodded in greeting. Do you know why you're here, Jessica? Richard asked, studying me with keen interest. No, sir, I don't, I answered honestly, my voice steadier than I felt. Richard leaned back in his chair. This morning, I was in our security office reviewing some updates to our system. I happened to be watching the lobby feed when Mr. Cooper arrived. He paused, his expression unreadable. I saw your interaction with him. My mind raced. Had I violated some protocol by escorting Mr. Cooper personally? Was I not supposed to use sign language with visitors? I'm sorry if I overstepped, I began. Richard raised a hand, stopping my apology. You're not in trouble, Jessica. Quite the opposite. He looked at Mr. Cooper. James, perhaps you'd like to explain. Mr. Cooper turned to me. I was impressed by your greeting, he said, speaking aloud this time. In 15 years of running Cooper Technologies, I've visited hundreds of companies. You're the first receptionist who's ever greeted me in sign language without being prompted. It just seemed natural, I said, then added in sign. Communication should be accessible to everyone. He smiled and continued both speaking and signing. I mentioned this to Richard during our meeting. In fact, it significantly influenced our discussion. Richard took over. What you don't know, Jessica, is that Cooper Technologies is preparing to launch a new division focused on accessibility technology, tools that help people with hearing impairments, visual impairments, and other disabilities navigate the digital world more effectively. That's wonderful, I said sincerely. It's a $15 million account, Richard continued. And when James mentioned your interaction, I realized we had an opportunity and a problem. A problème, sire? Yes. We don't have anyone on staff who knows sign language or has direct experience with accessibility issues. At least, that's what I thought until this morning. He leaned forward. That's where you come in, Jessica, James explained further. I need to work with a marketing team that understands both technology and accessibility. When I mentioned to Richard how you greeted me, how you thought to ask if I needed an interpreter for the meeting, something no one here had considered it, highlighted exactly what I've been looking for in a marketing partner. Richard nodded. Cooper Technologies wants to work with us, but they specifically want someone on the account team who understands the accessibility challenges their customers face. He looked at me directly. They want you. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Me? But I'm just a receptionist. I don't have marketing experience. You have something more valuable, James said. Authentic understanding and empathy. You can't train that easily. Richard stood up and walked to the window, his back to us for a moment. When he turned around, his expression was decisive. Here's what I'm proposing, Jessica. We want you to join the team that will be working on the Cooper Technologies account. You'll be the client liaison, ensuring that our creative and strategic work truly addresses the needs of their audience. My mouth fell open. That's a huge opportunity. It is, Richard agreed. And it comes with conditions. The pitch presentation is next Friday. You'll need to prepare and participate. If Cooper Technologies signs with us, you'll transition from reception to a full-time role on their account team. Your title would be Client Accessibility Specialist, with an appropriate salary adjustment, of course, added James with a smile. I don't know what to say, I managed. Say yes, Richard suggested. Unless you enjoy answering phones more than launching your career. I straightened in my chair, finding my voice. Yes. Absolutely yes. Good. Richard walked back to his desk and pressed a button on his phone. Diane, please email Ryan Matthews and tell him Jessica Mitchell will be joining the Cooper Technologies pitch team, effective immediately. He looked back at me. Ryan's leading the pitch team. Report to the 10th floor conference room tomorrow morning at 9. I'll have someone cover reception. Thank you for this opportunity, I said, still dazed by the sudden turn of events. James stood and extended his hand. I look forward to seeing your contribution to the pitch, he said, then added in sign, show them what you can do. As I rode the elevator back down to the lobby, my mind whirled with equal parts excitement and terror. I had just been handed the opportunity I'd been waiting for. but I had less than 10 days to prove I deserved it. And something told me that not everyone would be happy about the receptionist suddenly joining their team. I arrived home that evening in a daze, the events of the afternoon still not fully registering. My small apartment in Fremont, usually a sanctuary after long days at the reception desk, now felt like an unfamiliar space as I paced back and forth, phone in hand. "You have to call Emma," I told myself. "She won't believe this." Emma and I had maintained our close relationship into adulthood. She now worked as an ASL instructor at a community college in Portland, and we video called at least once a week. Tonight, though, I needed her more than usual. When her face appeared on my screen, her hands immediately began moving. "You look weird. What happened?" she signed. For the next 20 minutes, I explained the day's events, my hands flying so fast they occasionally blurred on camera. Emma's expressions shifted from surprise to excitement to fierce pride. "This is amazing, Jess," she signed enthusiastically. "I always told you that knowing ASL would open doors. But I don't know if I can do this," I confessed. "I'm not a marketer, but you are a communicator," she countered. "And you understand accessibility in ways they don't. That's valuable. The executive team won't see it that way." Emma's expression hardened with determination. "Then make them see it. You've spent years watching how they work from that reception desk. You probably know more about their business than half the people there." Her confidence in me was heartwarming, but didn't completely quell the doubt gnawing at my stomach. What if I fail? What if I make a fool of myself? "What if you don't?" she challenged. "What if you're amazing and change how they see accessibility forever? What if you help create technology that changes lives?" When she put it that way, the risk seemed worth taking. The next morning, I dressed with particular care, choosing a structured navy blazer over a simple white blouse and tailored pants. Professional, but not trying too hard. I arrived at the office 30 minutes early, heading straight to the 10th floor conference room, where Richard had instructed me to report. The room was empty when I arrived, so I took a seat midway down the long table, not presuming to sit at either end where team leaders typically position themselves. I pulled out a notebook and began jotting down ideas about accessibility and marketing that had occurred to me overnight. At precisely 9 o'clock, the conference room door swung open, and 5 people entered in deep conversation, falling silent when they noticed me. I recognized Ryan Matthews immediately, the rising star of the strategy department whose campaigns had won several industry awards. Behind him were 2 creative directors, the head of digital marketing, and Amber. Amber's eyes widened in surprise, but she recovered quickly and gave me an encouraging smile. Ryan looked less pleased. "You must be Jessica," he said, his tone making it clear he was not thrilled about my presence. "Richard mentioned you'd be joining us." "Yes, thank you for having me," I replied, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. "Let's get something straight from the beginning," Ryan said, taking a seat at the head of the table. "I run this team, and we have a specific process. Richard may have brought you in because of your unique skill set, but this is still a marketing pitch that requires marketing expertise." The others took their seats, their expressions ranging from curious to skeptical to, in Amber's case, concerned. "Now, let's go around and introduce ourselves," Ryan continued. "I'm Ryan Matthews, Strategic Director and Team Lead for this pitch. I've been with Wilson and Brooks for 8 years and have led successful pitches for clients including Technova, Meridian Systems, and Pacific Northwest Airlines." The introductions continued around the table. Lisa and David from Creative, Jasmine from Digital, and Amber from Account Management. When they reached me, I took a deep breath. "I'm Jessica Mitchell. I've been with Wilson and Brooks for 3 years as the main receptionist. I'm fluent in American Sign Language and have extensive personal experience with the deaf community through my cousin, who I grew up with." David, one of the creative directors, raised an eyebrow. "No offense, but how exactly does that qualify you for a high-stakes marketing pitch?" Before I could answer, Ryan jumped in. "Jessica is here because the client specifically requested someone with sign language abilities. She'll be a resource for cultural sensitivity issues and potentially to demonstrate our commitment to accessibility during the presentation." The way he phrased it made my role sound purely decorative, a prop to impress the client rather than a valuable team member. I'd like to think I can contribute more than that, I said carefully. I've observed hundreds of clients come through our doors and have a good sense of what makes them respond positively. Ryan smiled thinly. Of course. Now, let's get down to business. We have 9 days to prepare a comprehensive pitch for Cooper Technologies' new accessibility division. For the next 2 hours, I listened as the team outlined their initial approach. They were clearly talented marketers with impressive technical knowledge. But as they discussed campaign concepts and messaging strategies, I noticed something concerning. None of their ideas reflected a genuine understanding of how people with disabilities interact with technology. When there was finally a pause in the conversation, I raised my hand. Ryan looked irritated, but nodded for me to speak. I think we need to consider that the primary users of these products will be people who navigate the world differently, I began. Traditional marketing approaches might miss important aspects of their experience. David shrugged. Marketing is marketing. People respond to benefits, emotional appeals, and clear value propositions regardless of ability. That's true, I acknowledged, but the benefits and emotional triggers may be different. For example, for deaf consumers, marketing that emphasizes how a product helps them feel included rather than accommodated might resonate more strongly. Ryan glanced at his watch. Interesting perspective, Jessica. We'll keep that in mind. Jasmine, let's talk about the digital strategy. And just like that, I was sidelined. For the remainder of the meeting, Ryan directed questions and discussion away from me, occasionally assigning me administrative tasks, like taking notes or collecting lunch orders. When the meeting ended at noon, the team dispersed quickly, with Ryan reminding everyone about deliverable deadlines. Amber hung back until we were alone. That was rough, she said sympathetically. Is it always like that? I asked, gathering my barely used notebook. Ryan runs a tight ship, and he doesn't like surprises. Having the receptionist suddenly added to his team by the CEO? She winced. That's a major blow to his ego. But if the client specifically asked for someone with my skills, that's probably making it worse. Ryan prides himself on anticipating client needs before they articulate them. Amber squeezed my arm. Don't give up, though. You made good points about accessibility marketing, even if he pretended not to hear them. Over the next few days, a pattern emerged. I attended all the team meetings, but was largely ignored or assigned menial tasks. Ryan consistently introduced me to others as Jessica from reception, who's helping us with sign language, rather than as a full team member. When I tried to contribute ideas, I was politely acknowledged and promptly dismissed. After hours, I worked late at my kitchen table, researching Cooper Technologies and accessibility technology trends. I compiled notes on successful marketing campaigns targeting people with disabilities and created a document outlining common misconceptions in accessibility marketing. No one asked to see it. By the 5th day, frustration was building. That afternoon, the team gathered to review the first draft of the presentation. Ryan walked through the slides, which featured beautiful visuals and compelling copy about Cooper Technologies' innovative products. But something was fundamentally wrong. The entire presentation assumes the audience can hear the presenter, I pointed out when Ryan paused for feedback. If James Cooper is in the room, he'll miss significant portions unless we provide materials differently. Ryan's expression tightened. We'll make sure he has a written version of the presentation. That's not enough, I insisted. The presentation should be accessible by design, not as an afterthought. And shouldn't our approach to marketing their products reflect the same philosophy? An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Ryan finally broke it with a forced smile. Thank you for your concern, Jessica. We'll take it under advisement. Now, about the product demonstration section. That night, I couldn't sleep. The presentation was fundamentally flawed, not just in its delivery, but in its entire approach. Cooper Technologies was developing tools to make the digital world more accessible, yet our marketing strategy treated accessibility as an add-on feature rather than a core value. At 3 in the morning, I made a decision that could either launch my career or end it before it began. I drafted an email directly to Richard Wilson, outlining my concerns about the presentation approach and suggesting specific changes that would better align with Cooper Technologies' mission. My finger hovered over the send button for a full minute before I finally pressed it, then fell into an uneasy sleep. The next morning, I arrived at work to find Ryan waiting at the reception desk, his face flushed with anger. "Conference room, now," he said tersely, turning on his heel without waiting for a response. In the conference room, he closed the door and turned to me. "You went over my head." "I had concerns that weren't being addressed," I replied, my heart pounding but my voice steady. "You've been here for 5 days. I've been leading pitch teams for 5 years." His voice was low but intense. "Do you have any idea how this makes me look to Richard?" Before I could respond, Ryan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and his expression darkened further. "Emergency team meeting in the executive conference room. Richard wants to discuss a change in approach to the Cooper pitch." He fixed me with a cold stare. "Congratulations, Jessica. You just blew up a week's worth of work." As we headed to the executive floor, I wondered if I'd made a terrible mistake. Had my impulsive email derailed the entire pitch? Would I be sent back to the reception desk in disgrace? When we entered the conference room, Richard was already there, along with the entire pitch team. To my surprise, James Cooper was also present, joining via video conference on the large screen at the end of the room. "Good, you're all here," Richard said. "I've asked James to join us because we need to realign our approach to this pitch." He looked directly at me. "Jessica raised some important concerns last night that I believe merit serious consideration." For the next hour, we discussed my suggestions for making both the presentation and the marketing approach more authentically aligned with accessibility values. James nodded frequently, occasionally adding insights from Cooper Technologies' perspective. Ryan contributed professionally, though the tension in his jaw never fully relaxed. By meeting's end, we had a substantially revised approach that centered accessibility in every aspect of the campaign. As the meeting concluded, Richard made one final announcement. "Given the new direction, I'm adjusting team responsibilities. Ryan remains team lead, but Jessica will now co-present the accessibility portion of the pitch." He looked at me. "You have 3 days to prepare. Make them count." The mixture of terror and exhilaration I felt walking out of that meeting was unlike anything I'd experienced before. I had been given a real chance to prove myself, but with that chance came enormous pressure to deliver. That evening, I called Emma again. "I need your help," I signed. "I have to become an expert on marketing to the deaf community in 3 days." She grinned. "Good thing you know someone who teaches this stuff. Let's get to work." Over the next 3 days, I barely slept. By day, I worked with the pitch team, who now grudgingly included me in discussions, though Ryan maintained a cool professional distance. By night, I video called with Emma, practicing my presentation in ASL and refining my arguments about accessibility-centered marketing. "Remember to sign more expressively for a formal presentation," Emma coached. "Business ASL has different expectations than conversational signing." I practiced until my hands cramped, determined to represent both Wilson and Brooks and the deaf community with equal professionalism. The team was revising the entire presentation based on the new approach. Lisa and David from Creative developed visuals that conveyed information through multiple channels simultaneously: visual, textual, and symbolic. Jasmine restructured the digital strategy to emphasize accessibility features as core benefits rather than specialized add-ons. Even Ryan seemed to be warming to the new direction, though he never explicitly acknowledged that my input had improved the pitch. 2 days before the presentation, we gathered for a full run-through in the executive conference room. The presentation had transformed dramatically. Instead of a standard marketing pitch, we had created an immersive experience that demonstrated rather than merely described accessible technology. When my turn came to present the accessibility strategy section, I began signing while speaking, demonstrating how dual-channel communication could reach multiple audiences simultaneously. I explained how Cooper Technologies' new products could be marketed as universal design rather than specialized tools, expanding their market potential while fulfilling their mission of greater inclusion. When I finished, there was a moment of silence. That was actually quite compelling, Ryan admitted. The dual presentation approach creates a powerful visual experience even for hearing audiences. Coming from Ryan, this was high praise indeed. I felt a small surge of confidence that helped quiet the persistent doubts. The rest of the run-through went smoothly until we reached the Q&A preparation section. Ryan outlined how questions would be handled during the actual pitch. "I'll field most client questions," he explained. "Lisa and David will handle creative inquiries. Jasmine will cover digital, and Amber will address account management questions." "What about me?" I asked. "If James asks questions in sign language, I should respond directly." Ryan shook his head. "We need to maintain message control. If he asks something in sign language, you translate it, I'll respond, and you can translate back." "That's inefficient and might seem dismissive," I argued. "It's like making someone go through an interpreter when you could speak to them directly." "It's standard procedure for pitches," Ryan insisted. "We need one voice leading the presentation." I looked to the others for support, but they avoided my eyes. Even Amber seemed unwilling to challenge Ryan on this point. Only 3 days ago, I might have backed down, not wanting to create conflict. But something had changed in me over the past week. "I respectfully disagree," I said firmly. "If we're pitching accessibility as a core value, we need to demonstrate it in our approach. Having me translate rather than respond directly contradicts everything we're proposing." Ryan's expression hardened. "This isn't a democracy, Jessica. I'm the team lead, and I've made my decision." Later that afternoon, I found myself alone in the elevator with Richard Wilson, a rare occurrence that seemed too coincidental to be chance. "How's the preparation going?" he asked casually. "Very well," I replied, then added, "except for one issue." I explained the disagreement about handling questions in sign language. Richard listened thoughtfully. "What do you think is the right approach?" he asked. "If we truly believe in the message we're delivering about accessibility and inclusion, we should practice it ourselves," I said. "Having me translate rather than respond directly creates exactly the kind of barrier Cooper Technologies is trying to eliminate." Richard nodded. "So you're suggesting you should answer questions that come to you in sign language?" "Yes, but only those specifically addressed to me, or about accessibility issues." Ryan would still lead the overall presentation and Q&A. The elevator reached the lobby, but before I could exit, Richard held the door open. "I agree with your approach, Jessica. I'll speak with Ryan." The next morning, Ryan called an urgent team meeting. His expression was tight but professional as he announced, "We're adjusting the Q&A protocol. Jessica will respond directly to questions asked in sign language, particularly those about accessibility features and marketing approach." He didn't mention his conversation with Richard, and I didn't ask. Instead, I thanked him and assured him that I would coordinate closely with him throughout the presentation. The day before the pitch, tension ran high. We had one final rehearsal scheduled for that afternoon, leaving the morning for last-minute adjustments and personal preparation. I was reviewing my notes in a small meeting room when Amber found me. "Ryan's looking for you," she said, her expression worried. "There's an issue with your section of the deck." I hurried to the conference room where Ryan was working alone, his laptop open to my section of the presentation. "There's a problem," he said without preamble. "The accessibility marketing strategy slides don't align with our overall positioning." I looked at the slides in question, the ones I had created, outlining how Cooper Technologies could position their products as universal design rather than specialized tools. "What's the issue?" I asked. "These reflect the approach Richard and James approve. They're too consumer-focused," Ryan argued. "Cooper Technologies primarily sells to businesses and institutions, not individuals. Their new line is aimed at both markets," I countered. "The strategy works for either audience. We need to revise it." Ryan's tone made it clear this wasn't a suggestion. "I've drafted alternative slides that better align with our enterprise focus." He showed me his versions, which effectively reverted to the original approach of marketing accessibility as a specialized feature rather than a core benefit. All my work had been stripped away. "This contradicts everything we've been developing," I protested. It's the old approach with slightly updated language. It's the approach that will win the account, Ryan insisted. Trust me. I know what enterprise clients want to hear. But James Cooper specifically responded to the universal design approach, I reminded him. He mentioned it during the check-in call yesterday. Ryan's expression hardened. The presentation is tomorrow morning. These are the slides we're using. I'm giving you a courtesy notification, not asking for permission. In that moment, I realized Ryan had deliberately waited until the last possible moment to make this change, ensuring there would be no time to appeal to Richard or revise the approach again. It was a calculated move to reassert control over the pitch. I had a choice: accept the change and present slides I didn't believe in, or fight one last battle that might derail the entire presentation. I can't present these, I said finally. They contradict everything I'd be saying in my verbal presentation. Then I'll present this section, Ryan replied. You can still do your sign language demonstration at the beginning. The dismissive way he reduced my role to a mere demonstration ignited something in me. No, I said firmly. Either we use the original slides that were approved, or you'll need to find someone else for tomorrow. It was a risky ultimatum, especially from someone who had been a receptionist just a week ago. Ryan's eyes widened slightly, then narrowed. Are you threatening to quit the team the day before the pitch? I'm refusing to present material I know is wrong for the client, I clarified. If that means I'm off the team, that's your decision. We stared at each other for a long moment, neither willing to back down. Finally, Ryan closed his laptop. Fine, we'll use your slides. But if this pitch fails, remember, it was your call. He left the room without another word, leaving me both relieved and terrified. I had won this battle, but at what cost? Had I just made an enemy of one of the most influential directors in the company? And what if he was right? What if my approach was wrong for the client? That night, I barely slept, my mind cycling through worst-case scenarios. By morning, exhaustion had blended with adrenaline to create a strange, hyper-focused state. As I dressed in my most professional outfit, a charcoal suit I had splurged on 2 days earlier, I gave myself a final pep talk in the mirror. You know this material. You understand this audience. You've earned your place at that table. Whether I truly believed those words remained to be seen. In a few hours, I would either launch my new career or crash spectacularly before it even began. The morning of the presentation dawned clear and bright. Seattle's typically overcast skies giving way to unexpected sunshine that streamed through my apartment windows. I chose to interpret it as a good omen, though my stomach remained knotted with anxiety. I arrived at the office an hour early, wanting time to center myself before the team gathered. To my surprise, the conference room was already occupied by Amber, who was setting up refreshments and checking the audiovisual equipment. Couldn't sleep either? She asked with a sympathetic smile. Not really, I admitted. Too busy imagining all the ways I could mess this up. You won't. She handed me a cup of coffee. I've watched you this past week. You know this material better than anyone on the team. Ryan might disagree with you. Amber's expression turned serious. Ryan feels threatened. You've accomplished in 1 week what most people couldn't do in a year, getting the CEO's attention, changing a major pitch direction, and securing a presenting role. That's impressive, Jessica. Her words bolstered my confidence slightly. Thanks for saying that. I'm not just saying it. I mean it. She checked her watch. The team will be here soon. Use these last few minutes to get centered. As Amber left, I took her advice, reviewing my notes one final time and practicing key sign language phrases that needed to be particularly expressive. By the time the rest of the team arrived at 8:30, I had reached a state of focused calm. Ryan entered last, immaculately dressed in a tailored suit, his expression professionally neutral as he nodded to each team member. Cooper Technologies will be here at 9. Final check presentations loaded, handouts ready, demonstrations tested. Everyone confirmed their readiness. Ryan turned to me last. Jessica, your slides are in the deck as requested. Are you prepared? The tension in his question was subtle but unmistakable. Yes, I replied simply, refusing to be drawn into any last-minute conflict. Good. He straightened his tie. Remember, this is a $15 million opportunity. Let's make it count. At precisely 9 o'clock, Patricia from the executive reception appeared at the door. Cooper Technologies has arrived. Mr. Cooper brought his executive team with him. My pulse quickened. James hadn't mentioned bringing his team during any of our planning calls. This was an unexpected complication. James Cooper entered first, followed by 4 others, 2 men and 2 women, all carrying tablets and looking expectantly around the room. Richard Wilson came in behind them, making introductions as the Cooper team took seats on one side of the conference table. James spotted me and smiled, signing quickly. "Good morning. Looking forward to your presentation." I signed back. "Thank you. I'm excited to share our ideas." This silent exchange caught the attention of his team, who looked between us with interest. One woman in particular, who James introduced as his Chief Innovation Officer, Sarah Chen, seemed especially intrigued. Ryan smoothly took control, welcoming everyone and outlining the presentation agenda. We'll begin with an overview of Wilson and Brooks' understanding of Cooper Technologies' objectives, then move into our proposed marketing approach, creative concepts, and implementation strategy. The presentation began with Ryan eloquently framing the opportunity and our agency's capabilities. His delivery was flawless, engaging, and confident. I could see why he'd risen so quickly in the company. Yet I also noticed that James Cooper, while nodding politely, was not fully engaged. He frequently looked down at his tablet or exchanged glances with his team. The creative directors, Lisa and David, presented next, showcasing beautiful concept designs for the campaign. Their slides featured striking visuals with minimal text, making them accessible even without verbal explanation. This was one change that had survived from our accessibility-focused revision, and I noticed James becoming more attentive. Then came Jasmine with the digital strategy. Here, too, our revisions had remained intact, with her presentation emphasizing multi-channel communication and universal design principles. James began taking notes, and his team leaned forward with greater interest. Finally, Ryan announced, "Next, Jessica Mitchell will present our accessibility marketing strategy, which forms the core of our approach to positioning Cooper Technologies' new product line." This was my moment. As I stood and moved to the front of the room, my nervousness crystallized into a strange clarity. I no longer felt like a receptionist pretending to be a marketer. In this moment, I was exactly where I belonged. "Good morning, everyone," I began, speaking and signing simultaneously. Cooper Technologies is creating products that bridge communication gaps. Our marketing approach should do the same. I noticed immediate reactions from the Cooper team. Sarah Chen's eyes widened slightly, while James smiled and nodded encouragingly. "Traditional marketing segments audiences by demographic categories," I continued. "We propose a different approach. Universal design marketing that speaks to human needs first, specific abilities second." As I moved through my presentation, I explained how accessible design benefits everyone, not just those with identified disabilities. I demonstrated how marketing that acknowledges diverse ways of experiencing the world creates more authentic connections with all consumers. "When we design for the edges, we improve the experience for the center," I explained, using both voice and sign. The same curb cuts that make sidewalks accessible for wheelchair users also benefit parents with strollers and travelers with rolling luggage. Throughout my section, I maintained eye contact with different members of both teams, signing fluidly while speaking clearly. The practice with Emma had paid off. I was able to express complex marketing concepts in both languages without breaking stride. When I reached the strategy slides that Ryan had attempted to change, I presented them with particular conviction. By positioning these products as universal design rather than specialized accommodation, Cooper Technologies expands their market while maintaining their mission of greater inclusion. James was now fully engaged, occasionally signing brief comments to his team. Sarah Chen was taking rapid notes, and even the Cooper team members who didn't understand sign language seemed captivated by the dual-channel presentation. As I concluded my section, Ryan moved to retake control of the presentation. "Thank you, Jessica. Now, if there are any questions about this section, I can address those before we move on to implementation. James raised his hand, but instead of speaking, he began signing directly to me. The universal design approach resonates strongly with our company values. Can you elaborate on how this would translate to specific marketing channels? Ryan looked momentarily uncomfortable, clearly unable to follow the signed question. According to our agreed protocol, I was supposed to translate the question, let Ryan answer, and then translate his response. But something in James's direct address to me suggested he specifically wanted my perspective. Taking a deep breath, I replied directly in sign language. Each channel would emphasize different aspects of universal design. Social media would showcase diverse users benefiting from the same features. Print would use tactile elements and enhanced visual clarity. Digital would incorporate multiple ways to access the same content. As I signed, I noticed Ryan shifting uncomfortably beside me. I had technically followed our agreement by answering a question asked directly in sign language, but I could tell he felt sidelined. To bridge the gap, I added aloud for everyone's benefit. Mr. Cooper is asking about channel-specific applications of universal design principles. James nodded and responded aloud. Jessica's answer is exactly what we're looking for, a marketing approach that practices the inclusion it preaches. He looked at Ryan. I'd like to hear more from her about this perspective. Ryan's professional composure slipped for just a moment before he recovered with a tight smile. Of course. Jessica is a key member of our team for this project. He stepped back slightly, ceding the floor to me. For the next 20 minutes, I found myself leading an impromptu discussion about accessibility marketing, fielding questions from both James and his team. Sarah Chen was particularly engaged, asking detailed questions about implementation across different platforms. Throughout this unexpected turn, I maintained my composure, drawing on everything I'd researched and learned from Emma. When technical marketing questions arose, I smoothly incorporated points from the broader team strategy, giving credit to Ryan, Lisa, David, and Jasmine when referencing their work. Eventually, Ryan managed to regain control of the presentation to cover implementation timelines and budget considerations. By then, however, the energy in the room had shifted decisively. The Cooper Technologies team was animated and engaged, with James occasionally signing comments to me that I discreetly translated for our team. As the formal presentation concluded, and we moved to the networking portion with refreshments, James approached me directly. That was exceptional, he signed. Not just your signing skills, but your understanding of how accessibility isn't just about accommodation. It's about creating better experiences for everyone. Thank you, I replied, my hands moving more expressively in my excitement. It's a perspective I've developed through years of bridging different communication styles with my cousin. It shows, he responded. Your authentic understanding is exactly what we've been looking for in a marketing partner. Richard Wilson joined us, looking pleased. I see you two are already continuing the conversation, he observed. James switched to speaking aloud for Richard's benefit. I was just telling Jessica how impressed we are with Wilson and Brooks' approach, particularly the universal design marketing strategy. Richard smiled. Jessica brought a valuable perspective to our team. We're fortunate to have her. As they continued talking, I noticed Ryan watching us from across the room, his expression unreadable. Despite his earlier resistance, he had performed professionally throughout the presentation, adapting quickly when the focus shifted unexpectedly to me. I made a mental note to acknowledge his leadership when we debriefed later. The meeting concluded with handshakes all around and promises of follow-up conversations. As the Cooper team departed, Richard addressed our team. Excellent work, everyone. Let's reconvene in the executive conference room in 30 minutes to debrief. In that half-hour break, I retreated to a quiet corner of the office, my hands shaking slightly as the adrenaline began to subside. What had just happened felt surreal a week ago. I had been answering phones at the reception desk, and today I had presented to a major potential client who responded enthusiastically to my ideas. Amber found me there, her eyes wide with excitement. Jessica, that was incredible. The way you handled those questions, Ryan looked like he was having a stroke when James started signing directly to you. I laughed despite my lingering tension. I wasn't trying to sideline him. It just happened. Well, it happened amazingly, she grinned. Come on, we're due in the executive conference room. I have a feeling this debrief is going to be interesting. She was right. When we gathered around the executive conference table, Richard stood at the head, his expression thoughtful but pleased. I've just gotten off the phone with James Cooper, he announced without preamble. Cooper Technologies wants to move forward with Wilson and Brooks as their marketing partner. A ripple of excitement moved through the team. Successful pitches typically involved multiple meetings and weeks of negotiation, not immediate decisions. There's more, Richard continued. They specifically cited our innovative approach to accessibility marketing and authentic understanding of inclusive design principles as the deciding factors. His gaze shifted to me. They've requested that Jessica serve as the lead client liaison for the account. The room fell silent. Ryan's face remained carefully neutral, though I could see the muscle in his jaw tighten. Lisa and David exchanged surprised glances, while Jasmine offered me a small, approving nod. Amber squeezed my arm under the table. This represents a significant opportunity for Wilson and Brooks, Richard went on. Not just the Cooper account itself, but positioning ourselves as leaders in accessibility marketing, a growing field as population demographics shift and regulatory requirements evolve. He turned to Ryan. Ryan, your leadership of this pitch was exemplary. The overall strategy and presentation were polished and professional. I'd like you to oversee the broader implementation team, with Jessica managing client communications and accessibility strategy. It was a diplomatic solution. Ryan maintained his leadership position while acknowledging my unique contribution. Ryan nodded, his professional demeanor intact despite what must have been a personal disappointment. Thank you, Richard. I look forward to delivering exceptional work for Cooper Technologies. He glanced at me. Jessica brought a valuable perspective to the team. Coming from Ryan, this was high praise indeed, and I appreciated his graciousness in what must have been a difficult moment for him. Richard concluded the meeting with logistics and next steps, but as people began to disperse, he asked me to remain behind. When we were alone, he leaned against the conference table, studying me thoughtfully. You've come a long way from the reception desk in a very short time, he observed. It's been quite a week, I agreed, still processing everything that had happened. I'm creating a new position, he said, Client Accessibility Specialist. Starting salary is double what you're making now, with standard bonuses for client retention and satisfaction. My breath caught. Thank you, Richard. I don't know what to say. Say you'll continue bringing that authentic perspective to our work, he replied. That's what won this account, Jessica. Not just your signing skills, but your genuine understanding of how to communicate across different needs and experiences. I will, I promised. As I left the executive floor, no longer a visitor but now a rightful occupant, I felt a profound shift in my professional identity. The receptionist who had greeted visitors for 3 years had become something else entirely, a valued strategist with a unique perspective worth hearing. And it all began with a simple greeting in sign language, offered without expectation of reward, just a human connection that bridged different worlds. The Monday after the presentation, I arrived at the office to find a handwritten note on my reception desk. Please report to 14th floor, office 1422. Your new business cards are waiting. Richard. For a moment, I stood frozen, staring at the note. This was real. I was no longer the receptionist at Wilson and Brooks. I was now Jessica Mitchell, Client Accessibility Specialist. Taking a deep breath, I picked up my personal items from the desk where I'd spent 3 years and headed to the elevator. Office 1422 turned out to be a corner space with windows on 2 sides, modest by executive standards but exponentially more prestigious than the reception desk. Inside, I found not only a stack of new business cards but a handwritten note from James Cooper. Looking forward to our kickoff meeting Wednesday. Your perspective will transform how we communicate our technology to the world. JC. The first few weeks in my new role were a whirlwind of activity. The Cooper Technologies account officially launched with a formal signing ceremony where James publicly acknowledged my contribution to winning the business. As promised, I was named Lead Client Liaison, responsible for ensuring our marketing strategies maintained authentic accessibility principles. My relationship with Ryan evolved into a respectful professional partnership. While we would never be close friends, he came to value my unique perspective, especially as the accessibility focus of the Cooper account generated interest from other potential clients. For my part, I learned invaluable lessons about strategic marketing from his years of experience. "Your instincts were right about the universal design approach," he admitted one day, after a particularly successful client meeting. "It's opening doors I never expected." Amber and I celebrated my promotion over dinner, where she confessed she'd always believed I was capable of more than reception work. "You just needed the right opportunity to show what you can do," she said, raising her glass in a toast. "To greeted the right person at the right time." Mark, my former supervisor, was predictably shocked by my sudden rise. "I always knew you had potential," he claimed, though his surprised expression told a different story. I chose not to remind him of the times he'd dismissed my suggestions or overlooked my contributions. Perhaps the most meaningful result of my career change was the email I received from James Cooper about a month after the pitch. He wrote to inform me that Cooper Technologies had decided to create a new division focused specifically on communication accessibility, inspired in part by our marketing approach. "Your presentation helped us realize we weren't thinking broadly enough," he wrote. "We were creating tools for accessibility when we should be creating tools for better universal communication." He invited me to serve as a consultant on the division's marketing advisory board, a part-time role I could perform alongside my duties at Wilson and Brooks. Richard enthusiastically approved, recognizing the business development potential. The first major campaign for Cooper Technologies launched 6 months after our initial presentation. The centerpiece was a series of advertisements featuring people of all abilities using the same technology in different ways, emphasizing the universal design principles we had championed. The campaign won 2 industry awards for inclusive marketing, establishing Wilson and Brooks as leaders in the field. As my profile within the company grew, I decided to launch an internal initiative, weekly ASL classes for interested staff members. What began as a small lunchtime gathering grew into a popular program with over 30 regular attendees, including Ryan and, somewhat surprisingly, Richard Wilson himself. "My granddaughter was recently diagnosed with hearing loss," Richard confided after one session. "Learning to sign is my way of ensuring we'll always be able to communicate." The ripple effects of that fateful Wednesday continued to spread. Other clients began requesting accessibility audits of their marketing materials. I assembled a team of consultants with various disabilities to review our work, ensuring authentic representation rather than merely assumed needs. My friendship with James Cooper deepened as we worked together. He introduced me to leaders in the deaf community and technology sector, expanding my professional network exponentially. When Cooper Technologies hosted an accessibility summit, I was invited as a keynote speaker, presenting on marketing that bridges communication gaps. Standing at the podium that day, addressing an audience that included both deaf and hearing attendees, I couldn't help but reflect on how dramatically my life had changed in less than a year. From greeting visitors at a reception desk to presenting on stage as an industry expert, all because I had chosen to meet someone in their preferred language rather than expecting them to adapt to mine. During one of our regular video calls, Emma expressed pride in how I'd leveraged our shared language into career success. "But the best part," she signed enthusiastically, "is that you're changing how companies think about communication. It's not just about your career, you're creating real impact." Her words crystallized something I had been feeling but couldn't quite articulate. My new role wasn't just about professional advancement, it was about changing perspectives and creating more inclusive communication in the business world. This realization led me to propose a new position at Wilson and Brooks, Director of Inclusive Communication, overseeing accessibility and inclusion across all client accounts. Richard approved the role with one condition: I would need to build and lead the department myself. You've proven you have the vision, he said. Now prove you can scale it. It was a tremendous challenge, but one I embraced wholeheartedly. I began by recruiting specialists in various aspects of accessible communication, not just for the deaf community, but for people with visual impairments, cognitive differences, and other diverse communication needs. 1 year after greeting James Cooper in the lobby, I sat in the executive conference room, presenting my department's first-year results to the board of directors. The numbers spoke for themselves. 15 new clients, specifically seeking inclusive marketing expertise, 4 industry awards for our campaigns, and a 20% increase in revenue from accessibility-focused projects. After the presentation, Richard pulled me aside. When I saw you greeting James in sign language that day, I knew immediately you had something valuable to offer. But I never anticipated how significantly you would transform our company. I just saw someone who needed to be communicated with on their terms, I replied. Everything else followed from that simple principle. That principle has become one of our core values, Richard observed. And it started with a receptionist who cared enough to learn another language for her cousin. As I reflect on this journey, the lesson seems clear. Authentic human connection transcends job titles and organizational hierarchies. My technical skills opened the door, but my empathy and willingness to meet others where they are made the real difference. I still keep a small framed photo on my office wall, a picture of Emma and me as teenagers, signing to each other across the kitchen table. It reminds me daily that communication isn't just about conveying information. It's about building bridges between different ways of experiencing the world. And sometimes, those bridges begin with a simple greeting in a language that says, I see you. I value you. I will meet you where you are. What unexpected skill or knowledge have you used that changed your life's direction? Drop a comment below sharing your story. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more stories about workplace transformations and authentic human connections. And remember, you never know who's watching when you choose kindness over convenience. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. And until next time, keep building bridges wherever you go.